Hello and welcome back to Give and Take. I'm Jeff Zwerink and I'm excited to host this segment of our show where we explore important scientific ideas and how to equip you to go out and share the gospel. Today we're joined again by Dr. Darren Williams and we're going to address this question. Should Christians try and prove the Christian faith? Darren, it's good to have you back.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So I'm kind of excited. I know you've got a PhD in physical chemistry. You've been teaching at Sam Houston State University for quite a while. And one of the things you teach is forensic chemistry. Kind of tell us a little bit about what that is.
Okay, forensic chemistry, the idea of forensic is science applied to law. So this is the science that goes into the courtroom. So we're really interested not just in doing science for science's sake, but what can be proved.
Okay, so what do you, you're dealing with types of evidence and explanations and support and contradiction. Kind of walk us through some of the terminology and how you go about using the science to support a case, if you will.
Yes, and in fact, the word proved is troublesome. Rarely do you prove something. You just talk about, is this set of facts consistent with this theory? Mm-hmm. So I'll use the word consistent more than I will prove.
Is that true just of the forensic side, or is that true in your experience on the scientific side as well?
In science in general, really. In physical chemistry especially, when you're dealing with systems that are difficult, microscopic, atomic level systems, you really can't say we've proven this, but you can say this particular theory is consistent with the facts.
So in some sense, putting it out into the cosmology arena, we can prove that different mass objects fall at the same rate. Mm-hmm. Proving that there's so much dark matter in the universe is a little harder because there's lots of different explanations that could account for the observations we have.
And so you put up all of the competing theories and make sure, the theory that connects the most data points is probably the most likely at this point. It's the most consistent with the data.
Okay, so let's kind of bring that into the conversation of, how as Christian, as an apologist, I've encountered people, well, what proof do you have for God? Or even in my mindset, I had this idea that all I have to do is put these arguments in place and then I've proven the truth of Christianity.
Right.
Is this a way to approach things?
Yes, and I think that is problematic. I think a lot of folks who are interested and passionate about Christian apologetics fall into that trap. They have a logical syllogism and they hammer it at somebody and they wonder why they don't just say, I agree. Mm-hmm. They feel like they've proven their case.
Well, and that's interesting because when you're dealing with the syllogisms, there is that aspect of proof. Premise one, premise two, conclusion follows in a proof, if you will.
Yes.
The hard part is, I think the science kind of bears on, are the premises correct, which you're not really proving. Though.
Right. The premises are based upon the data and noticing the facts that are out there and comparing them to reality and seeing if they hold. And so you would support each of the premises with this language that I'm saying. This premise is consistent with the data, and that premise is consistent with the data.
So let's kind of deal with someone who's not just actively antagonistic towards Christianity, but in some sense willing to listen and dialogue. If we're not out trying to prove Christianity, if you will, what are we trying to do?
Right. I think it's a good thing, even if someone is antagonistic to Christianity, I think you can still have a good dialogue, a productive dialogue, if you back away from your effort to prove something and just get into dialogue about the facts that they would consider compelling. So can you agree on certain facts that you both think correspond to reality? How do they come to know those facts? What weight do they put on certain facts? Are they strict empiricists, or they leave some role for experience or some role for historical knowledge?
So it seems like there's some of that's an interesting dialogue in just what do we think and what don't we think. But at the end of the day, if we're honest, if we're asking someone who doesn't believe in God to think that God exists, that's a pretty marked shift in thought.
It is.
How do you approach helping someone make that transition, if you will?
I think it's helpful to break how we come to know something into 3 steps. The first step being noticing facts that may be new to us. And so that would be noticing and then comparing them to reality. This is the correspondence principle of truth. If it corresponds to reality, we would call that true. Okay. And so assenting that those facts are actually fact claims, I should say. These fact claims are representative of reality. And then that third step would be taking action on them. We use the word in Christianity faith, but I think that that word has become slippery. It's really trust. Do you trust that the facts represent reality? These fact claims are actually true. So those three steps, you have fact claims, you have an assessment of some sort, and then there may be a time when you take action. You can think of this as an airplane. I mean, I look at an airplane and I believe that it can fly, but until I step onto that airplane, I haven't really put my trust in
you can
the engineering.
almost give assent to it without ever doing it. Do you really believe it or not?
I saw it land. I'm sure that it's doing fine. But when I step onto that airplane, I've taken a different role than merely just assenting that aerodynamics works and this plane is well constructed.
Well, and I love the way you articulate that there's you're kind of looking at something new, or something new is presented.
Yes.
You're evaluating whether you think it's true or not.
Yes.
And then do you act on that? And that's really faith.
Think
in the
if
way
you've
the Christian
never
talks
seen
about
an
it.
airplane and someone tells you that big piece of metal is going to fly.
Well, it depends on whether you trust the person telling you or not.
That's true.
But, no,
yes.
but it kind of goes to there's different things that weigh into how do we make those truth claims, or how do we evaluate whether something is worth putting our trust in.
Right.
So as a Christian and as an apologist or as an evangelist, what are we trying to do when we're talking with people? Are we just out there declaring the truth and letting people wade through it? Or are we trying to...
Some do that, but I don't think they get very far.
Okay.
And it certainly doesn't build relationships. I think it's better to get into a discussion. It's helpful when you break things down in a framework like this, where you can say, all right, what kind of fact claims are out there that you have maybe not considered? Both sides, this is a give and take. And so then you can talk about the fact claims that are in Christianity and then discuss, well, how would we know if that was true or false? Then you get into the assent part and testing it. There are certain claims that are testable, and there are other claims that are not. So many of the times you look at the ones that are testable, and that's enough for you to take action.
It's interesting just thinking about that, as I see a lot of parallels in the way Jesus did things.
Yes.
There was no doubt that he was declaring truth.
Right.
But there were often things associated with what he did that validated his truth in some level. But then he always called for people to take action on them.
Yes.
And so those are really the three steps you're talking about.
Yes. And Paul, too, when he came back from Damascus after his conversion, it says he spent every day in the synagogues proving that Jesus was the Christ. And they attempted to stone him. They had to get him out of the city. So his approach to prove logically, in their face, fact, wasn't bearing any fruit at all. So,
well, thanks, Darren. I very much appreciate your comments. I have wrestled in the past with feeling like I needed to prove the truth of Christianity. In reality, what has helped me is recognizing that all I need to do is to introduce people to the truth claims of Christianity, maybe help them see that they are actually true, and then call them to make a commitment. And let the Holy Spirit be involved in helping them accept that and actually carrying it out. That has been very freeing to me. And I would encourage you to go to reasons.org, search for Darren Williams, and you'll get a lot of useful articles and posts on how to equip you to go out and help people see the truth of Christianity.